Felix VanderPallen live.
Hello once again, it's Felix VanderPallen live. Exciting, intriguing, and inspiring narratives here on YouTube at Felix VanPee, Felix VanPee. Comment, like, share, and please do subscribe. They say a prophet or prophetess is without honor in their own home or domain. It's even scriptural. You can find it in Mark 6:4. In other words, they can be disregarded in spite of their mantle. Now, the term prophet or prophetess there, though means that literally, could also be generic or a metaphor. The man, the woman in office, the expert, the teacher, the professional, what have you, may not be recognized. They may not be celebrated. They may not be honored the way they expect in their fields, in their endeavors, in their fraternity. It happens. Life goes on. Should that stop you? No, that shouldn't be a distraction. Just maintain your focus. Today, I have a chat with a professional, one who's worked with the BBC World Service in London. He served with government, contributes and still works with the United Nations, the Director of Strategic Communications and Public Information at the United Nations missions in South Sudan.
Felix VanderPallen live.
So with me today on Felix VanderPallen Live, I have an awesome personality, one whose experience, expertise, accomplishments spans over international broadcasting, media, journalism, communication. I mean, this is somebody who has impacted our time for a while now. Tonight, here on the show, of course, it's an evening thing, and so we're going to take it easy and get into the issues. I have with me the Director of Communications, and we are talking United Nations mission in South Sudan, Mr. Ben Dotsei Malor. He joins me on the show. Mr. Ben Dotsei Malor.
My pleasure. It's good to see you.
Good to have you.
And thank you for what you are doing.
Yes, you're looking hale and hearty.
we thank God.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So how are you faring? And also as Director of United Nations missions in South Sudan, how are operations, as long as your mission is concerned there? South Sudan?
So the communications and public information section is under the head of the UN mission in South Sudan. Our purpose, we have 4 pillars working under me, over 100 staff members. The vast majority, 40 plus, are people working in radio. We have a radio operation there called Radio Miraya. Radio Miraya is the biggest broadcast platform in South Sudan. Simple, not because I want to tout it, because the government networks do not go as far and as wide as we do. So Radio Miraya is big. Number 2, we have multimedia. Anything you see on Twitter or X, you see on Facebook, Instagram, you see photo, video, stories online, the multimedia team does that. Then there is a third component we call community outreach. Community outreach, they will organize events, campaigns, fill stadiums or places with thousands of people so we can do messaging. Then the fourth area is the spokesperson in media relations. So that is the communications section with the objective of getting the United Nations missions activities, challenges, achievements communicated and publicized to people in South Sudan and also for people externally. So that is the purpose of the team. And all of us, we get together. We just had a retreat and we made a theme, working together better for success.
Wonderful. So how are the people responding, and how do you see cooperation from them in terms of whatever the mission is in actual sense, the way they relate to what you do?
The people love our major platform, which is the radio operation. People are engaged. Many officials, ministers, they come on the programs. We give the platform, and we say that Radio Miraya is your partner for peace. Radio Miraya is the voice of peace in South Sudan. So we broadcast in English, and we also broadcast in Juba Arabic, so that there is a high level of illiteracy there. So people are good with the mission, to be honest. We've had some challenges with the government because Radio Miriah started before the nation came into being. Radio Miriah started, I think, 2006. South Sudan became a new independent nation, the world's youngest nation, in July 2011. And then we had one or two challenges, but by the grace of God, we have worked with the minister, acting minister for foreign affairs, worked with the minister for information, communication, and we've come to an agreement where whatever differences they had, all those things have been lifted. So we are in a new dispensation moving forward. Overall, South Sudanese people, I try to relate in a Ghanaian context all the time. Yeah, and there are some things we in Ghana must know, which is that the hero of South Sudan, Dr. John Garang de Mabio, the person who fought and led the fight for the liberation of South Sudan and died tragically some years back, he at a point carried a Ghanaian passport. Wow. Yeah, I am hearing this from, in fact, I met his widow. And she asked, oh, where are you from? And I said, my name is Ben, I'm from Ghana. I said, oh, my husband spent a lot of time in Ghana. So I'm asking, how come? And then she said, oh, he carried a Ghanaian passport. So anytime he traveled, for some reason, he had to do a stopover through Accra. And apparently, our departed charismatic president, Jerry John Rawlings, was a close pal to the man. And I think it was during the government of Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings that Dr. Garang had a Ghanaian passport. And it's, so there are these bonds, there are these things that certain South Sudanese who have done the freedom fighting will tell you linkages with Ghana, linkages with Kwame Nkrumah. So relating with the people, first, as a United Nations official is exciting. As a Ghanaian, it comes as a bonus. But that comes with responsibilities as well because they count on us and then we must discharge on our responsibilities to them.
You found your second home, so to speak, then.
In a way. In a way. Sometimes certain ethnic groups in Ghana actually trace their migration route along the Nile, Egypt, Sudan, through to where we are now in Ghana. So sometimes you are looking out for signs. I've been told that somewhere, not in South Sudan, but somewhere in the bigger Sudan, the northern Sudan, that there are a group of people either in the Nuba Mountains who have words similar to Twi. I'm trying to explore that.
Okay.
I am exploring that, and I would be delighted to find if they call Onyami the same as Nsio, if they call water the same. So I'm exploring those. But when you are there, sometimes they are taller than us. The average South Sudanese is tall. It's dark-skinned and very flawless, smooth skin, and very fit, looking taller. So it's when you go into a meeting with the generals, even though I'm 6'3", suddenly you're
challenged.
Right. you realize that, look, you're not looking straight. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So let's look at your involvement in media, having been involved in media, journalism, communications, etc. At that level, I'm sure the youth, young people in the media, even the elderly ones, would have a lot to draw from you, your experience and all that. You agree with me, don't you?
No, it's a very important point. First of all, I am not on air. I am more in a managerial leadership role, which also carries its responsibilities. Because South Sudan has a population of between 11 to 12 million. They haven't done a census lately, so we will go with a figure between 11 to 12 million people. 70% of the people of South Sudan are young men, young women under the age of 30. So South Sudan is a youthful population. Within that youthful population, you then have the largest number or the larger portion being girls. So if you want to look at a representative image of South Sudan, it is a young girl that is typical. So we have programs for the youth on Radio Miriah. Radio is still very, very important in South Sudan. And then we try to do programs, call-in lines. We reserve lines for the women. So the women are not jostling with the men who are usually ready to call in. The women have a line to come in. We have programs that will look at the gender dimension. They have stipulated in their plans and their initiatives that positions of authority, I think Parliament, there should be a 35% representation of women. So those things, and then we have the mandate as the United Nations to promote the things that will bring protection of civilians, that will bring human rights, respect for human rights, distribution of humanitarian goods to people affected by all manner of climate action issues, and also peace and security. So on those calls, we do our programming, our work across all parts of my section, communications and public information. We are doing all these things to deliver on the mandate that the United Nations has given the mission, and also to support the government, which is a transitional government, until elections are held, currently scheduled for December 2024.
Okay. So we can also look beyond the institution you're working for. Because I asked you how you're impacting, indirectly, how you're impacting the youth, folks in the media who look up to you. You've got quite a following, even on social media. As soon as you sneeze, and you have quite a whole lot following you. So I still want to sort of delve a bit into how you're impacting the youth, the people who want to who admire the role you have, how this is panning out.
So I have over 108 plus colleagues working under me. I treat everyone as a colleague. Through the programming that we do, for example, I would listen to the morning show. And I was presenting Network Africa at the BBC for many years. I know some things that automatically resonate with anybody listening to them in the morning. Why should I be late going to work? It's because of certain things and what kind of music you're playing, how you are communicating to me. So I give feedback regularly to the main presenters of the morning show, which we call the Miriah Breakfast Show. And also in meetings with, let's say, multimedia or community outreach or with the media relations, we try and be real. We try and be direct, especially because it's one thing when I am in New York at UN headquarters, you are editing and you are trying to get stories written in a way that will attract audiences. When you are in Juba, you are in South Sudan, you are crafting messages, you're working with the head of the mission. And there are issues coming up. Maybe people from, let's say, Teshi in that place in South Sudan are planning to launch an attack on people in Dodowa. And you pick this up, and then you are deploying military personnel, peacekeepers to these places. You also have to get messaging on the radio so that you prevent these things. So what I tell colleagues back at UN headquarters in New York is the fact that when you are working in the field, the results, the impact, the effects are quite immediate. You see that what you're doing is not distant, it's direct. You're saving lives, you're helping people, you are trying to help the nation, the world's youngest nation, South Sudan, to rise up. And South Sudan is a very rich land anyway. One thing many of us don't know, they have oil. I describe it to my family when they ask me, Ben, how is South Sudan? And I try and give a sentence. South Sudan is a land of milk and honey. But there are giants in the land. And literally, my section, the gentleman who serves as our driver in our section, is more than a driver. But when he goes to his hometown, which is west of Juba, southwest of Juba, when he comes back with a gallon of honey, not a bottle. Where he's coming from, honey is no big deal. It's like some parts of the Volta region, you can go there, they give you a sack of gari, because gari that we value here in Accra probably doesn't mean they are generous to give. When he brings the gallon, then all of us in one particular place, we will take bottles and then start to split the honey.
Oh, no.
Our brothers and sisters, they haven't commercialized anything. This is the raw honey that is just common where he's coming from. Yeah. And I talk about milk. There are more cattle in South Sudan than human beings. So milk is not an issue. The land has oil. They are exporting oil through the country they split from, which is Sudan. They're exporting oil, which is coming into the economy. But cattle, which should be a source of wealth, and is a source of wealth, also leads to something that is rather sad and tragic. You will find cattle rustling, cattle raiding is quite common. And the raids almost always lead to people being killed. It's happening, and it's something that has to be stopped. But the industry, the cattle industry, where you can get beef, and then you can get the hides, and you can do shoes, and then the value chain is created, is not there. Cattle is there usually to be used to go and pay dowry to buy or to marry young women. So if you're you want to marry somebody, a woman now you see, then you need about 50 cattle, you need about 100 cattle, right? And apparently in some of the cultures in South Sudan, the taller the woman, the more cattle you need to bring. Which then leads to, if you're a young man, you are living in Teshi and you are planning to get married, you organize some young men with you, you don't have the cattle to go pay the dowry, so you target somewhere in Shy Hills, you know that the cattle, you do all your homework before they realize one night with guns and everything, you've gone, raided the place, taken about 500 or 1,000 cattle, kill the men. You kill the men, usually you abduct the women and the babies and the children, and you take them to your place, and then sometimes you forcibly go and marry the women, or sometimes you give the young girls out to other people. It's a bad giant that is in the land. It is unacceptable. The abductions have been condemned. A solution needs to be found. And if you look at Uganda, Kenya, they probably 50 years ago had cattle raiding issues, but no more. So lessons have to be learned from nearby countries and then be implemented. The cattle should be a blessing, but not a curse where the raids, and by the way, when you go to Shy Hills and do that, Shy Hills people paying by the people they've lost, they will buy their time and then organize themselves. And at the time of their choosing, they will then retaliate. So you have these cyclical things going.
With this problem you
highlight,
does it come under one of the things the United Nations want to look at there, and has any efforts?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We are there. And though we shouldn't and we don't take the place of the government, this is a sovereign government. They have responsibilities for maintaining the people. But where things go in a certain way that challenge our mandate to protect civilians, then we have to find out with the government, what is the way to stop this? And you have a tradition of this nature that's been there for ages, and we are trying with help of the government to say, these things must cease. Sometimes we deploy UN peacekeepers when we get intelligence to go to certain areas to prevent the violence, to prevent the retaliation. And it's not been easy, but it's something that can be done if you have the right leadership. And we talk about political will, it's a challenge, but there are giants in the land. One of my staff members told me, another giant, he said, my grandfather was a refugee. My father was a refugee. I was a refugee. And I'm trying hard that my son and my daughter do not become refugees. When somebody says this to you in a sentence, my mind goes straight back to my village in Ohabu in the Volta region. Where was my grandfather? Was he roaming around unstable? Where was my father? Was he fighting against discrimination in the liberation war?
It's a lot of reflection.
Yeah. So you realize that we have not had the trajectory they've had. But still, you see that our people there need the principles of Kwame Nkrumah. They need the principles of someone like Julius Nyerere. They need the selfless, sacrificial leadership qualities of the heroes we have to bring people together, to say, cut out the ethnic differences. All of us are one.
The united front.
Yeah. So sometimes if it's easy for me to quote Kwame Nkrumah to them. I say, Kwame Nkrumah said Ghana's independence was meaningless unless you here in South Sudan, you were also, you were liberated. So as an Nkrumah, it becomes easy for me to serve our brothers. And they're not there. You see people, they're not there waiting. The majority of them want to just get their act together. They don't want to be receiving handouts, but how to empower them, to help them under the banner of the United Nations so that peace and security is ensured, civilians are protected, democracy is established, peace and security, and then human rights abuses are removed. Those things, those are the challenges.
All of these will work, with better communication. That's where you come in.
Yeah.
I believe the work will be done.
Yeah.
And let's go back a bit to how you started. You mentioned your village, if I'm not mistaken.
Ohabu?
Yes.
In the Volta region.
And in trying to get a bit more about you, if you don't mind, I remember somewhere along the line you mentioned that even in those youthful days, because you loved the media, you loved radio, you were listening to the BBC, where you worked for a number of years later on, and you mentioned that you grappled a bit with the language, the English language, if you don't mind. And I'm wondering, with you today, so articulate, eloquent, so knowledgeable, and somebody, people ask questions. So he used to be. That way.
I'm still working on my English.
What happened?
I want this to go to any young woman, any young man listening to me, maybe in secondary school, SHS, or even in the university. My spoken English was very poor in Keta Secondary School. I couldn't speak. I was good at writing and passing exams, among the top 10.
It's inconceivable listening to the man speaking today.
No, I was so bad that I was teased with the grammatical mistakes I made in Kitasco. I don't want to repeat them, because next time you see me on the streets of Accra, you will want to tease me with the mistakes I used to make. And I say this for the young ones struggling with a subject or struggling with something they want to overcome and become better tomorrow. I say this to the parents who see a child. Once the child is determined, working hard, not playing around on the phone or watching TV, but they are studying, give them a chance. Why? Because if someone had come to Keta Secondary School when I was in Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, and said, oh, one of you, very soon, in a few years' time, you will be broadcasting at the BBC to millions of people. I know people who came from Accra to Keta Secondary School. I would have said, oh, they are talking about you. Because I admired them. Some went to.
Believe in yourself.
It's not. You believe in yourself that you could pass exams, but spoken English, you knew that these brothers and sisters whose parents maybe came from the Volta region, but are working government workers successfully in Accra and send them. Yeah, because they went to Datu's preparatory school. They were speaking English. I'm a little farm boy who went to school without shoes. And by the grace of God, I passed exams. Maybe because my brothers and sisters had books around, so I was familiar with books. So I use this as an example that I was not good at spoken English. I was very poor. But then I developed a love for radio. When we came from boarding house to the village, I would go to the farm, come back, and borrow my older brothers' transistor radio, and fiddling, trying to get GBC to listen. Then I discovered BBC, African numero 1, but too much music. I wasn't more into music. As I listened more, I discovered Hilton File, a Sierra Leonean on Network Africa with great eloquent delivery. And then I got hooked. And gradually, my English improved by it's like somebody listening to Bernard Avle every morning before they realize, or Kojo Youngson? Kojo of multimedia. And then you absorb these things and your spoken English improved. And one other fact I want to state. I'd never set foot in GBC before I ended up in the BBC. Maybe it just occurred to me. Let me say that again. I'd never set foot in GBC before I ended up in the BBC.
Have many felt that it's a way, it's a step?
No. So you can call me an accidental broadcaster.
I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, I'm an accidental broadcaster. Just from the passion of radio, I used to write to Talk Back. Talk Back was the letters to the editor. You all write your comments, you criticize something you've seen, and then Talk Back, they use your views. And it was validating for me in the village in Ohavu, coming back from Kitasco or Mauli school, scribbling on airmail letter. The young people don't know what airmail is. You have to go to the post office, buy it, and then you come and scribble and say, oh, I listened to this program, this thing was good, but I didn't. Why? And then suddenly you are there one morning, all the way from London, they mentioned Ben Dotsei Malor, that he sent these views. It's like, you felt, yes, they read my letter. It means my views from this village, yes. So from there, from there, and then I was going to do my master's in Glasgow University. Then the BBC, I visited them. Oh, you're the guy who used to write all these plenty letters. They received me. There was one particular colleague there called Jenny Horrocks. She received you as if you were coming from her village. Or
I think I had a chat with Jenny back in the years.
Yeah, wonderful. So I was an accidental journalist who ended up at the BBC with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy, but also as a former listener, there are some things that become a part of your character that you are able, when you go on air, you know that you have in you what used to appeal to you and kept you near the radio. So you just found that you could improvise. And then I had a lot of mentoring, feedback, learning from other people. And then before you realize, oh, they are giving you more responsibilities. And then you are growing. They are giving you training on the job. And before you realize, you are able to also, you are making impact and you improve, continuous improvement. So those are the things. But I never set foot in the GBC before I ended up in the BBC. And also if somebody's struggling with spoken English or some subject, I want to encourage them, you have hope. Because I couldn't have imagined myself with my poor spoken English, ending up at the BBC, broadcasting to millions. So there is a message of hope there.
So the standards of the media, especially in the face of the proliferation, if you like, what's your standard? The standards, what do you make of it?
Number one, it's challenging because the platforms are many. You didn't have only the BBC before that you depended on. Number two, social media. Twitter is very fast. Something is happening. Everybody is on Twitter. It could be in a village. Once you have the internet connection, you can do a lot. Facebook, other platforms. Number three, citizen journalism is a common thing now. Many people with very little training can just, either with a smartphone, immediately can report on things and be there to do things. So it's a challenge and it's also an opportunity because the pillars of journalism or broadcast practice have not gone away. At the BBC, it becomes a part of you that you have to be accurate, you have to be factual, you have to be balanced, you have to be fair, and you have to be timely, you have to be truthful. So these things are still at the core of journalism. When you have a platform, other people, I see activist journalism. I don't even want to call it activist journalism. I watch some people who they are doing something that is not journalism. But the average person who is looking for relevance, authenticity, and truth, when they see where these things are being balanced, the BBC, you couldn't just put anything there. You have to have at least two sources. But these days we can have several sources. So the pillars or the ethics of journalism accuracy, truth, being factual, being fair, being timely, being truthful, balance. If you speak to the government, get an opposition view, those things are there. But I'm realizing in this current dispensation with a multiplicity of platforms that you need also to do some sort of ethical solutions journalism.
Ethical solutions.
Yeah. Let me give an example. Every May, June, July, Accra gets flooded, right? We've had the June 3rd or 4th incident where lots of Ghanaians lost their lives around the Kwame Nkrumah. Yeah. It should be a policy agreed by all FM stations, private radio stations, that when this time is coming, we could depend on meteorological services, but we are going to make sure that with Google Maps and everything, weather now, you can predict quite accurately that it's going to rain in Aburi tomorrow between this time and this time, but it will not rain in Tema.
That was indeed a revealing and intriguing chat there with the Director of Strategic Communications at the United Nations Missions in South Sudan, Mr. Ben Dotsei Malor. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll bring you part 2 of it next week here on Felix VanderPallen Live here on YouTube. Please comment, like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. I am Felix VanderPallen. Thank you for watching. I'll be back next week Monday. Keep watching.
Felix VanderPallen live.